appraisers in Florida, we appraise property. We really don't tax it. Obviously, that has an awful lot to do with it. And where it becomes interesting is after we've done our job, then it's up to the different taxing authorities, of which we have 92 in Lee County, more than any county in the state of Florida. We have, as you well know, the fire districts are independent. The county commission you hear the most of, the school board, which is the largest as far as taxes, etc., and the different cities, municipalities, etc. So you got 92. It's our job to value the property every year based on what you guys are doing, what the buyers and sellers do the prior 12 months. We record it and we report it to the different tax authorities. Here's our results of our analysis of the market activity in those 12 months, because the assessment date is by Constitution, January 1st. So once which I'll do today, I'm taking that information to the different tax authorities. Here's the results of our work. Here's the value in your jurisdiction, be it countywide, whatever. They have the sole responsibility of taxes. It's up to them to decide how they're going to fund their budget if after they get the values, if they leave the millage the same, which they have the authority to do, or they could lower it. Generally, we tell them what millage, new millage to apply to the new values to get the same money as the prior year. That's called a rollback millage. They're not required to adhere to it. In years past, most, if not all, but certainly the vast majority of taxing authorities throughout the state were more than content to leave the millage the same, whereas as we know in the roll-up of values in 05, December was the peak of the market. In this county alone, there was a 39% increase in overall value.
So if they left the millage rate alone, by default, taxes really went up if they did nothing.
They'd automatically get 39% more money. That's simple math.
Now how about on the way down?
Well, that's what's going to be interesting. Last year was the first time we had an overall reduction. This year it's double that, based on 08's market, what the activity was. So if they left the millage the same, theoretically everybody would get about a 25% reduction in taxes. They're not required, nor do I tell them, because I don't have the authority to. I tell them what the millage, what the values are. Then it's up to the taxing authorities. If they, in their minds, can't afford to lose 25% of their revenues, they could raise the millage to offset that. But it's their call. They call it TRIM, Truth in Millage. They don't call it TRIA, Truth in Assessments. This year, I think for the first time, we'll have actual TRIM, Truth in Millage. I'm interested to see the next phase of the process, what happens. But it's their call.
What's your gut feeling tell you? What are you hearing?
Well, I think when the political pressure is put where it probably, of course, I'm a little prejudiced in this, where it belongs, which is the spending, then it would be their responsibility, and I think it's going to be more difficult for them, where it was pretty easy to leave it the same and get that much more money. It's going to be difficult to raise it to get more money.
Well,
I don't believe the county's going to raise their millage. I've heard from 3 commissioners, only by the press, etc. So that sounds pretty firm. I don't think that the school board backed off of a 25-cent, 1/4 mil increase, because I think of some stimulus money offset some of it, etc., and being able to cut in some areas. So hopefully others may follow suit, but they're going to have to defend it if they're going to raise the millage.
Well, if it weren't for the fact, though, that we have, the $270 million in reserves, which can kind of go back into that pot, that was what probably created when the year
when everybody was flush.
Yeah.
When the values were going up and some were leaving the millage the same and got more revenue. I think it's to their credit if that's the way they went, which they did,
right,
and were able to bank some of that. Now the taxpayer should probably be a little happier that they had it.
Exactly.
As opposed to now having to raise the millage. Now, then you got to look at, but wouldn't it have meant my taxes would have been less before? Well, yeah. So you got to look at it all.
So you're always taking it from the taxpayer. Now, the politicians are in a real conundrum right now, because we've seen significant cuts in employment and services at the county level. They got used to a very high level. But on the one hand, they've got the taxpayers saying, we're hurting. We can't afford to stay in our homes. We're losing our home to foreclosure. We've lost one of our jobs. Maybe we've lost both of our jobs. We can't afford the taxes the way they are now. And on the other hand, they've got a loss in services, and there's a balancing act, and something's got to give. And they've got a real tightrope they've got to walk here, as opposed to, do they go with the people, or do they go with the loss of services, or a combination of both?
It's probably going to be a combination of both. We're all in government having to look at our budgets. In fact, yesterday.
Hey, Ken,
at the
that's a
county
private
commission-
business
I
hard too.
understand. Oh yeah, no, and that's why. I mean, there's all
Yeah.
pressures come in all respects, but everybody's feeling the same relative to in their personal lives, or not everybody obviously, or in their business. But government would be the same, and we're trying to find ways. One of the ways that we've done in our office, I have one of the lowest costs in the state of Florida, and I've always been proud of that. It's not just, I've always been frugal, I believe, is that yesterday the county commission agreed with negotiation that the county attorney's office and my office has been doing for several months. Starting July 1, today, our legal work is going to be defended, meaning law cases, by the county. They have an interest in that, because if we were to lose a tremendous amount of value, then that actually would be less taxes that the county would receive. So, and it's so much less costly. My legal representation has been very good. I'm not complaining about that, but it's become very costly when its expertise was coming out of Sarasota. So we did, and I anticipate that would be a great savings.
Well, tell you what, you're listening to The Future of Real Estate presented by the Ellis and Remax. Why don't we come back, we'll take a short break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about some of these legal expenses and some of the lawsuits that you unfortunately have to put up with in your position. And in the second half hour, we'll really delve into values and find out where things are, and we'll kind of compare and contrast it with what we came up with and all of that. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.